this blaze.
At the very least, the smoke from this fire will be driven miles ahead of the actual blaze itself, so that's going to affect air quality for many people. If you are a senior, if you have breathing problems, and you live in the area, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing what you can to stay indoors and protected from this smoke, because there's a lot of smoke in the area from this Santiago fire. The National Weather Service issued a high wind warning and red flag warning for today and tomorrow. So, Maria, obviously, you know, this is a concern here, but it's also a concern for around Southern California.
There's no question. Air quality downwind of this fire. I'm looking at the Foothill Ranch area, even East Irvine, out towards Lake Forest. That wind is carrying all of that fine particulate matter and that pollution down. So in these communities, you're definitely going to be feeling the wind. You're going to be seeing some of that soot and smoke in the atmosphere. So really do want to advise you to stay indoors if you can. This is one day, if ever, I am glad that there is remote schooling. A lot of kids at school, but they're indoors, right? They're inside, so not having to deal with this at the moment. You can see how the smoke is lofting now well past, I believe that's a 241. So the winds right now, I've been looking in and around the area. I did find a site near the Santiago Canyon area, Silverado, Majeska. Winds are gusting near 25 to 30 miles an hour. Of course, these fires create their own wind. They create their own weather. But the fact of the matter is these strong gusty winds will be with us for the remainder of today, tonight, into tomorrow. So these are the conditions that we had been warning you about. We talked about this last week, and it's going to continue throughout the day today.
All right, thanks, Maria. Let's go back up to Sky Fox, to Mundell there, doing the work for us from the air, our eyes in the sky. Obviously, a real concern about how fast this is moving.
You know what, Michaela, the desk was just giving us some more information about some closures. I got a lot going on. If Vinny pushes in right there at that intersection off the 241 right there, we actually were just seeing the smoke is moving. There you go. You can kind of see the flames underneath the smoke. So that means that the flames actually have jumped to 241. They're on the other side of the 241 right now. There are some structures nearby where that fire is. Doesn't appear to be home, some sort of yard, maybe an industrial area, but there are definitely buildings right there. As Vinny's panning down a little bit more, you can see one of those small reservoirs out here, but a lot of homes out here, communities, and it gives you an idea how fast these flames are moving. And again, wind driven, but it also has a lot of the embers. That's basically what's just hopscotching along the hillsides out here. Now there is a lot of greenery around those homes. We're going to keep an eye on all that, but I can tell you for a fact, this fire definitely has jumped to 241 already. 241 closed out here, but the fire definitely still moving very quickly and catching on other spots. We haven't heard of any structures being damaged as of yet, but it is getting very close. At least that's what we can see from Sky Fox right there in that little intersection, but the smoke keeps covering it up. But it just shows you what the firefighters are dealing with. They actually have crews on the 241. Every now and then we can see them as well. So they are trying to get ahead of it, but there's very little they can do, especially with the size of the flames and how quickly that's moving. And the wind, that is basically the worst part of it all this afternoon.
Well, and the wind also makes it hard for them to do their job from the sky. You said, as you reminded us so perfectly, there is a firefight going on the ground, trying to stay one step ahead of the fire. In a wind-driven event, that makes it really challenging because of the speed, the velocity of that wind. There's so much smoke in the area. It's going to be affecting the air quality, and it will for some time. But again, really a fast-moving situation. We've been working and scrambling to get one of our reporters on the ground there, but they've had to readjust what their positioning. We'll get down to them when we're able to. But again, if you're just tuning in now, Santiago Canyon, a wind-whipped fire, the best way to put it. The day, a day like this, when we wake up to red flag warnings, there's always a concern of this kind of situation, and here we have it. Started at some 10 acres, and it's quickly grown. A battle from the air. We've seen several helicopters, water dropping, but there's also some fixed-wing aircraft in the area. They have to be careful. We got a good timing there as they do a water drop. They have to be very careful. Flying in wind like this with the amount of smoke is a very dangerous proposition. They are relying on their own eyes in the sky, as Stu in Sky Fox was telling us. They have essentially think of it, there's a fixed-wing aircraft that essentially serves as a flying tower, if you will, like air traffic control. They're doing air traffic control from the air, managing all of their personnel, managing the news helicopters that have to stay at a very different elevation, trying to get these pictures to show you at home, but then also managing their own aircraft in and around the area so they can battle this fire the best they can. All right, we're just waiting to get a little bit more information. Stu, you're doing a great job for us there. In terms of flying, you guys are at quite a different elevation. The smoke is really playing tricks with us on how it's, sort of moving in and around that topography.
Well, it's basically moving very, very quickly along the ground down there, and we just saw that one helicopter do a drop. And, I'm never one to criticize anything, and this is not even criticism. It is just what it is. When they do those drops, you saw that live on television. When they do the drop, usually that bulk of water just falls straight down and hits the spot. But because of those high winds, it's just dissipating down there, and that's part of it. I mean, those helicopter pilots, they're willing to do the flight. They're taking, they take the high winds into consideration. They're keeping it safe, but it is very limited on what the effectiveness of those drops are. Now, Vinny actually pointed out earlier on when we first got here, this might have been an older drop. There is some FOS check on the ground down there. They might have actually been able to do at least one drop before the winds got too great, or maybe that one aircraft did that drop and said, hey, we can't come back. But you can see that FOS check right there, and that's the flame retardant. That's the technical name for the flame retardant. But it does seem to have been at least a little bit of effective for that fire not moving in that direction. But again, the winds are basically pushing it off to the other way, more towards the west out here. There are a lot of homes. There's a lot of communities out there. And again, it's hopscotching along. And the embers, they don't care. As long as they land in something that's going to be green or something that'll burn, it'll catch on fire. So right now there's some firefighters that basically, that one guy down there, he's basically just kind of calling it in. You talked about that too. There were the eyes, basically just driving along saying, hey, we got fire here, we got fire here. And then they know that potential, and that's how they're going to move those crews around.
And by the way, behind this, there are a whole lot of men and women whose life work is the science of fire, right? They study the science of fire to understand its behaviors. But then by the way, today it's not just the fire, it's the wind. And there's the science of wind as well. It doesn't always behave the way we think it's going to be. There might be unexpected gusts of wind, which is danger for those things that you see flying right there, those choppers, those helicopter pilots. Man, they're doing God's work. When you think about what they're having to do of keeping their eyes on the ground, navigating the wind, navigating the smoke, and then also, by the way, making a targeted drop. Come on now, these people are heroes in the sky. All right, we're going to leave you for a second. Sky Fox, keep this picture up for us. We'll get back with you in a minute, Stu. Sandra Endo has left her live location this morning and moved to where she can talk about what she's seeing. And look at the wind. I mean, you are feeling it firsthand, Sandra. Explain where you are.
Absolutely. We're getting battered, Michaela, right here by the winds right here and the thick cloud of smoke. We just ran into a wall of smoke right here. We're along the 133, which is shut down to traffic, but we came in with fire crews. They were looking at this area right here by Bell Canyon Road, and they believe there are a couple of work units. Some people may be trapped in this canyon area. They're definitely keeping an eye on this, but you can see the flames and the smoke coming towards this way because the winds are gusting towards the west. We actually were further down and we had to make an escape. It was rather scary. I've never seen this type of behavior before in terms of how gusty these winds are with this fire. So right now it looks just perhaps on the screen like a spot fire along the 133. But again, these winds are definitely shifting these flames very, very quickly. Again, my photographer Armando Hernandez and I had to make an escape really because they just in a couple of minutes turned. And let me get out of the shot here so you could see just how quickly you can see that smoke just Okay, we're getting where we have to get
Okay.
out of this area.
Okay, you guys go. You
There's
guys
a
go.
fire crew saying we have to go.
Okay, Sandra,
we'll be
you and your
back when we
photographer
can.
go. You guys go. For those of you at home that are watching, these are not dramatics we're bringing to you for extra effect. This is the reality. We have a captain joining us by phone from Orange County Fire. Captain, I didn't get your name in time, sorry.
Yeah, it's Greg Barta.
So, Captain, talk to us about what you guys are dealing with there. The wind, it doesn't feel that this is going to do you any favors today. It feels sort of unprecedented. We're talking like 96 miles per hour. Talk about what a challenge that creates for you guys trying to fight this fire.
Yeah, so obviously we're dealing with red flag conditions, and the wind is very erratic today. We're dealing with rapid wind speeds and gusts that are, like you said, very, very fast. And it's making it very difficult for us to battle this fire. Every fire has challenges, but when you throw in wind into the mix, it's just the great unknown, and it's definitely making it difficult for us to battle this fire at this time.
Especially in canyon areas like this. Explain the difference. This is different if you're talking about a plain. You've got peaks and valleys, and you've got canyons. Difficult to get personnel in there. The topography and the wind together make it even more difficult.
Yeah, so obviously the topography, getting crews in there is very difficult. And the topography presents many different challenges as well. As the wind pushes the fire up these hills into these ridges and valleys, we see different fire behavior. The fire moves in different ways, and then just getting the resources in place is very difficult. So we're doing our best right now to put crews in tactically advantageous locations and kind of forecast where the fire is headed and what we can do to prevent any damage to homes and get out in front of this thing.
Give us an idea of where you're most concerned about homes at this point. Again, the fire is not burning towards homes right now. This could change.
Well, so the area that we're most concerned about is the Orchard Hills community in Irvine. That is probably our spot of biggest concern at this time. We are sending crews there at this time. Should this fire progress that way, we already have them in place to present a defensive option for us.
What are you advising residents of Orchard Hills community right now of? Do you want them to leave? Do you want them to shelter in place for now? What are you suggesting?
So we have issued an evacuation notice for the community of Orchard Hills at this time.
Mandatory?
Not mandatory at this time.
But again, if you are able to, and maybe you're moving a little bit slower, maybe you have some health issues, you might want to get out ahead of this. Captain Barta, talk to me about the resources you have fighting this fire right now.
Yeah, so our goal on every fire, especially these brush fires that are moving rapidly, is to throw a very robust response. We want to send as many units out the fire as quick as possible, and we've done that. Unfortunately, we are dealing with the wind. We have multiple fire engines and crews working from the ground, as well as helicopters and fixed wing fighting the fire.
And in terms of fixed wing, and we were just talking a moment ago, Captain, that the wind, it has its own behavior, right? That's an extra challenge for your helicopter pilots who are trying to navigate getting water on these hot spots, but then also having to contend with the wind and the smoke.
Yeah, our pilots up there are the very best in the business. They train all the time under extreme circumstances. They've dealt with this before, but yes, definitely challenges and definitely provide an added layer of difficulty when flying.
Okay. Captain Barta, we really appreciate you joining us. I know you guys are busy. We'll let you go. We want to get you back talking to your folks there and scrambling your resources as best you can. Thanks for making time for us. That's Captain Greg Barta with Orange County Fire. Roxy and Tony joining me here in the studio. One of the problems is, too, we've had a great summer, and we had a little bit of rain earlier in the year, lots of vegetation growing.
Yeah.
This area is so beautiful with those canyons, but all that chaparral is quick to burn.
Sure, and not enough rain. That's been part of the problem. It's been very hot, very dry. It was a very hot summer. We're talking about some of the warmest temperatures for the length of time. I know Maria has talked about that quite a bit, about how many days we had above average temperatures, and that, of course, is all contributing to what we're seeing right now.
I'm trying to remember. I think, Maria, didn't you say the last decent amount of rain was like May 18th? Is that right?
That was the last time we saw measurable rain in downtown LA, was May 18th, so more than 160 days. We actually had a little bit of moisture over the weekend.
Yeah.
We talked about the...
Very little, though.
Very little, but it was, it was significant in that people were noticing. We had the clouds, we had a little bit of shower activity, mainly up in the mountains and foothills, but none for downtown LA. I'm watching the wind conditions there in the Silverado Canyon area. Relative humidity values down to 10–12%. The winds are gusting near 25 to 30 miles per hour, and the captain talked about that Orchard Hills area there, just downwind. That's between the 261 and the 241, and that's prime. The winds are coming out of the northeast, so he's absolutely correct that all those communities should really be concerned and really try to evacuate, because the winds are just driving this fire down towards those communities. Again, very strong gusty winds, red flag warning conditions are with us through the remainder of today, with the strongest winds expected now until late this afternoon.
All right, and we see the reservoir not too far from where that fire is burning, which is, I guess that's very fortuitous that there is a body of water there from which they can draw. But the fact of the matter is this fire is moving very quickly, wind-driven, as Maria has pointed out as well, and as the captain that we just talked to. And yes, there are voluntary evacuation orders in place now for the Orchard Hills area. But something tells me unless they get a handle on these things, those evacuation orders are going to become mandatory pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is what we talked about last week. The wind, the weather does not start fires. We want to point that out, but whatever from a spark will create a fire, and under these weather conditions can spread rapidly and can explode. And that's why we talked about the National Weather Service issuing that red flag warning for these very dangerous conditions. High wind warnings also in effect.
And chaparral is the perfect fuel.
The fuels are actually very dry, record dry, when we talk about the conditions as we head into these peak months where we experience these strong gusty winds. We talk about the vegetation and the amount of firefighters look at the combination of the amount of fuel, how dry it is, that's dead fuel as well as live fuel, and it's at a critical juncture right now when we talk about the fire danger.
When do we expect to have these winds back off a little bit? Because right now it is just really ferocious out there.
These winds are going to continue throughout the day today. The wind warnings are going to be in effect through at least tonight through tomorrow. The mountains, the foothill communities, when we talk about these Santa Ana winds, it's that difference in pressure. We have the perfect recipe right now. Higher pressure up to our north, lower pressure to our southeast. And it's that difference in pressure in the wind just driving through those canyons and passes. These wind warnings are through at least this afternoon. So it's going to be several more hours of these critical conditions. These wind gusts up in those higher elevations, 60 to 75 miles per hour possible throughout the remainder of the day.
And when you start getting up into the 70s and beyond, you're talking about hurricane strength winds, 74 miles per hour. We're talking about Category 1. When you talk about 96 mile per hour gusts, you're talking about Category 2. I mean, those are incredibly strong winds. And then on top of that, to have that going on and wreaking havoc, you have these fires that create their own weather system within themselves.
It's such a challenge for firefighters right now. I know that several units have been dispatched ahead of the weather conditions we're expecting today and tomorrow. We clocked in a wind gust of 96 miles per hour. That's a Category 2 hurricane that is up in the San Gabriel Mountains. The danger is not just in this area, in the Orange County area, but across Southern California, all the way up to the Bay Area. They're talking about these very gusty, windy conditions.
And we're looking at the terrain. What is the best method that you're thinking the firefighters are going to use to try to combat the flames here? We talk about the super scoopers, which have been so useful in the past. That's kind of the best way at this point, right? Because look at this. Look at the terrain here.
Yeah, this is a remote area, so it's going to be a challenge for firefighters. Stu talked about some of those water dropping helicopters that are out there despite the windy conditions. Yeah. They want want to attack this as quickly as they can because these weather conditions are not going to improve. They're going to continue to be quite dangerous throughout the day today.
And the unpredictability with the wind, you don't know which way it's going to turn and how quickly that can change in just a split second.
Very erratic.
Well, and at some point, presumably, and I'm sure there's mobilization going on right now, they're going to have to get boots on the ground because that's really the only way that you can ultimately get things under control, because you have to build a line around this fire. And at this point, we're at zero containment because there's no one there, and they're basically fighting this fire through an aerial assault.
Absolutely. So the concern is those communities between the 241, the 261, that Orchard Hills area, they're going to want to try to contain this fire from all angles, but because of its remote location, it's going to be very difficult. So please, if you're just waking up and you're joining us, please stay alert, especially if you live in and around this area. The air quality, very poor. Of course, these winds, these very strong northeasterly winds driving not just the fire, but the smoke downwind into all of those communities.
And it travels. It really travels. Remember the last time we had these fires? Many of us were nowhere near the fires, but we had the embers on our cars. We could feel and smell that smoke in our lungs. Even if you don't have respiratory issues, it can definitely affect you. You know, I think we do have Sandra. She relocated with her photographer, I think, to a safer location. Sandra, hi. Where are you? What can you tell us?
Well, you could just see how gusty it is right here. We're along the 133 right now. We moved a couple miles after emergency crews here told us we had to get out of the way. You could just see how the winds have shifted. You see the black smoke right there. It's just a wall blanketing this area right now. This is near Bell Canyon Road. That's the overpass right there. And we were just beyond that area when the flames were overtaking our news van almost, so we definitely had to leave that area. But at that time, the winds were gusting towards the west all along the freeway. Right now, they seem to have shifted more north, so we can show you this picture. But you can see how quickly the colors change in terms of the smoke and just how fast these flames can really hop the terrain. Just look at what Maria was talking about, how dry it is. The vegetation here, it's completely like hay, straw. It looks like basically just dead vegetation everywhere. So that's why it's just so easily ignitable right here. We've seen very little crews in terms of working this area because all of them, frankly, had to leave and evacuate and get into a safer zone. But the sky, as you mentioned, you can see just the billowing smoke right now, and it's very hard to see. It's very, very gusty, and we'll keep an eye on these flames and of course, the gusty wind situation here along this area.
All right, Sandra Endo, we'll have you keep an eye out where you are, and of course stay very safe. We want to make sure that that you're able to cover it from where you are safely, and certainly not get into an area that can be very dangerous for you. And again, we have voluntary evacuations happening in the Orchard Hills area. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to update you on the Santiago Canyon fire as Good Day LA continues right after this.
Good Day LA is sponsored by Owning, transforming the way real estate is financed, bought, and sold.
I'm Mike Garcia, and I approve this message.
First, career politician Christy Smith lied to get to Sacramento.
I'm not going to go and raise taxes.
Then Smith voted for over $3 billion in higher taxes and fees and supports gutting Prop 13. Next, she voted to devastate our independent contractors. 70,000 jobs gone, and she's proud of it.
I supported a law that eliminated 70,000 California jobs.
Career politician Christy Smith lied about raising taxes, proud of killing jobs.
When you pay extra for a turbocharged engine, you might feel the need to show it off. But if it comes standard, you might not.
Quick call or come by your Volkswagen dealer today and get 0% APR financing for 72 months on 2020 Jetta models.
A bipartisan coalition.